Hi, and welcome to the Life After 50 show. This is what you need to know for the second half of your journey. I'm Katherine Watson, and I'm going to be your host today. This show is sponsored by FindHoustonSeniorCare.com, the one-stop shop for everything senior care in Houston, Texas, and surrounding areas. Find Houston Senior Care helps you connect directly with assisted living communities, home care companies, hospice providers, elder law attorneys, and so much more. Over 500 articles, podcasts, and videos on the website will answer many of the questions that you have. And today our guest will answer a lot of questions for you too. So today I am here with Greg Shelly, and I've known Greg for quite some time. In fact, he's helped me out. He's helped friends of mine out. He's helped clients of mine out. He's just a great guy to know. He is the program manager for the Harris County Long-Term Care Ombudsman program in Houston. And that program is housed at the University of Texas CISIC. Did I say that correctly, Greg?
Yes.
CISIC, University of Texas CISIC School of Nursing, located in the Texas Medical Center. During his 8 years as an ombudsman, he's worked approximately 1,000 complaints and provided over 7,000 consultations to customers and faculty staff. He created social media accounts for the local program shortly after joining in 2010 and continues to manage those. I quite frankly don't know where you get all the time to do everything that you do because he is a busy man. In 2014, he also authored a research titled Utilizing Online Tools to Increase Volunteer Ombudsman Presence in Long-Term Care. He has given presentations on the local, state, and national levels involving the Ombudsman program and role volunteer recruitment and retention and advocacy approaches. Greg says he couldn't be prouder of the work he feels privileged to do, and I couldn't be prouder to have him on the show today. Greg says he feels his own dignity is significantly elevated by honoring and passionately protecting the dignity of those who by circumstance are more vulnerable to the many forms of abuse and neglect. If you have an elderly person, or it doesn't have to be an elderly person, it could be a younger person that is needing care, maybe usually round the clock, the Ombudsman program is a program that you really want to get familiar with. They can be your advocate and really help you in so many different ways. So I'm going to bring Greg on now and just let him tell you a little bit about what the Ombudsman program is, how it got started, how to find one, what they can do for you, and all that good stuff. Greg, take it away.
Good morning, Catherine. Thanks a lot. Well, you hit it right on the head there. Ombudsmen are advocates for the folks who live in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. So a big part of what we do is just education and outreach, trying to empower them with the knowledge of what their rights are, and when needed, helping them exercise those rights. Right now, we're just the Harris County program. I shouldn't say just, because we are a very big program. We have 100 nursing homes and 270 assisted living that we visit. And part of the reason that we have the time and ability to do as much as we do is because it is volunteer driven. We currently have just about 80 volunteers making regular weekly rounds to usually a single nursing home, spending several hours there each week, getting to know the residents and staff and helping them work through problems, all with an eye on doing what we can to have the best possible quality of life for the folks living there.
That's awesome. So, Greg, you have, in every nursing home you ever go to, you see a big sign, but I think most people ignore that sign about the Ombudsman program. I know I did when my mother-in-law was in a skilled facility after a broken hip. I didn't know what it was. The name is kind of an unusual name. I didn't know what it meant. And it was a few years down the road before I really saw the value and began to understand how you could advocate for so many people. Tell us a little bit about how somebody might be helped by some of these volunteers in the nursing homes and skilled facilities.
Yeah, you're right about our poster. It's one of the regulatory requirements that they have it up, but a lot of times it does blend into the background with all of the other information that's also posted nearby. I think most of the time when folks understand what we do, it's usually from a face-to-face meeting, maybe a chance visit where we get to explain in person what we do and what we can do for them. I love the unpredictability of the visits. You can go in and sometimes you can't get past the first person that you talk to because they either have a big story to tell or they have a lot of issues that they need, and some assistance and advice on how to work through them. And truthfully, sometimes it's just being a person in the mix that can take the time to truly listen. And that role of listener is one of the biggest ones we play. Many times all we're doing is consultations. We're giving information on exactly what the rights are and maybe even recommendations on how to best exercise those rights. And they don't really necessarily need our help in person or help with the problems at hand. And one of the really nice things about it is they have full control over whether or not we get involved with anything. We have to work off the residents' consent. And I like to say informed consent. I like to give them all of their options and then let them tell me what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. So who is the Ombudsman program? What entity is it under? Is it a government type program? What exactly is it, Greg?
Great question. Originally created as part of the Older Americans Act. Really kind of as a extra set of eyes and ears on the folks in the nursing homes, a little bit of additional oversight. We currently here in Texas, fortunately, are also getting some additional funds for the assisted living visits from our state legislature. So at the moment, it's a combination of those two, the Older Americans Act and some state legislature funds. Other programs in different areas, and there's 28 of them here in Texas. Some of them find different grant monies from local entities and some other federal entities. But for the most part, that is what it is. It's under the Older Americans Act, and that's where we get the authorization to investigate complaints and concerns or work through problems on behalf of the residents with their guided consent.
Good, good. So you kind of act as a mediator a lot of times, don't you? Between maybe the nursing home staff and the resident and their families?
There are opportunities to do mediation. One of the things that we really want folks to understand, though, is when it comes to a resident giving us direction on what they want, we're not really a mediator in that. We're their advocate and we're pushing for what they want. But we do have plenty of instances where it's one family member having an issue with another family member. And if the resident gives us consent to be involved in that, that is true mediation opportunity. And then occasionally even one resident has a problem with another resident. And in those cases where we can be a mediator between the two. Right,
right. So if we've got somebody listening here that is, in their mid 50s and they've got a mom who has just been put into a rehab facility, what kinds of things would you tell them that they need to know, and how should they reach out to the ombudsman, or will an ombudsman reach out to them?
I think that's probably the best time to get a hold of an ombudsman is when you're just beginning the search or even beginning to ponder in advance what the options are. Unfortunately, most folks find out the hard way. It'll be a fall that person ends up in the hospital for more than 3 midnights. They get the skilled nursing qualification under Medicare, and then the next thing you know, they're in a nursing home, even though when they're leaving the hospital, it's thought of as just a transitional care facility, and that is an aspect of what the nursing homes do. So usually folks find out in that fast, unexpected way. If they're looking ahead and they have some time to explore, calling the ombudsman, and there's an ombudsman representative in every county in the country. So calling them and getting some advice on where to go to get care, things to look for when they're making a decision about whether it's an assisted living or nursing home. Also kind of establishing a little bit of expectations and practices for getting more individualized care through care planning and those sorts of things. Learning that in advance is a really good contact, and the ombudsman is unique in the scheme of things because we visit all of those nursing homes and assisted livings, and every community has its own uniqueness, just like every individual does. And, you know, truthfully, a lot of it comes down to who happens to be running the place at any given time. But we can help people get the checklist, access the tools that are online for making an educated decision about where to go in terms of both assisted living and nursing homes.
Right, right. And, you know, that's one thing I love about the Ombudsman program is that you are true advocates. You're not getting paid by the nursing homes. You're not getting paid by the assisted living. Your volunteers do go out and visit and get to know the people that work there, the people that live there, what's going on. You know, a lot of times people will ask me, well, what's the best assisted living? There is no best. There's many that are wonderful, but it's, you know, it's a very personal type living situation, and you need to find the one that's the best fit for your family. Talking to somebody like an ombudsman can really help because they go out there and see and talk to the people and get to know them, and they'll, you know, after talking to you, can kind of help guide you which ones might be the best fits for your family. And I think that's so important. The social workers at the hospital and the care homes, I mean, the nursing homes and all, they do a great job, but they're overwhelmed and they just don't have time to go out and visit all these places. So a lot of times they don't really know a lot about the individual places. So talking to the ombudsman, I think, is important.
Yeah, and sometimes just like individuals, everybody's got different backgrounds, different histories, and so the environment impacts them in different ways as well. But we'll know certain unique things. Like I've had certain nursing homes where there's a higher population of younger veterans, maybe a little more able-bodied. And if they're looking to be around folks that they have a little more in common with, that would be one that I would recommend, you know, certain folks go check out. And then helping people understand the spectrum, like you mentioned assisted living. It's such a very big consumer-driven part of it. And there's ranges in that spectrum from anything from $700 to $800 a month all the way up to about as much as your imagination can soar. And I think the average here in Texas is around $3,500 for an assisted living. And a lot of the folks, when it comes to nursing home care, a lot of that's being the short term, of course, is the Medicare side, but the long term, a lot of it is the Medicaid side. And so, but on the Medicare side, that's kind of a consumer driven option. I think a lot of times folks don't realize leaving hospitals that if they have just regular Medicare, most of the facilities in the county are going to swing the doors open wide to take them in, because that's the best part of the business model these days. There's a lot of money to be made off the short-term rehab.
Yeah, there is. Yes. Greg, we talked once before. We did a podcast and you talked about a program called Money Follows the People or something of that sort. I know we don't have a lot of time to talk about it today, and we'll probably get you back, but could you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, Money Follows the Person is a program that allowed folks who are living in nursing homes to not necessarily be limited to just that kind of institutionalized care. It gave them opportunities to return to assisted living, and in some cases with family support, independent living, so that they could be in the least restrictive environment and still get services through Medicaid. And what that did, it's it's still around. It's such a win-win program because it's better placement for the individuals. And of course, it ends up being less cost through the Medicaid system because you're paying for assisted living or independent living as opposed to the nursing home care side.
Right.
These days in Texas, a lot of that is the outreach anyway that we used to do a lot of, and we still do. We want people to know their options. But the managed care organizations that are in each of the nursing homes, their service coordinators typically are the ones that help coordinate that. And as they meet people that they think might be eligible for it, they encourage them to participate. But it's like a lot of things, even just educating folks on the idea that there's an ombudsman out there that's a free service, and getting the news out that you have those kinds of options, because a lot of folks think once they're on Medicaid, they're stuck with having to be in a nursing home.
Right, right. And that's so important. So there's a lot of reasons for people to reach out to the Ombudsman program. Greg, do you need volunteers from time to time?
Always have a demand. We have a 3-month training process, a 36-hour internship at minimum, and we do it 3 times a year. We have another class coming up starting in late April, and that one will be the last one we do for this fiscal year, which ends in August for us. And then we'll start another set in September. But now's the time to contact us if you wanted to get into it for the April class. The more the merrier. We love getting more and more volunteers out there. And it's a great volunteer experience. That's where I started at. I never heard of the Ombudsman program, stumbled on it, was looking for volunteer work. And now 8 years later, I haven't looked back. It's been great. And it started with that volunteer experience. So.
Yeah. So Greg, if somebody wanted to be a volunteer, how many hours would they expect to use? You know, how many hours would they need to commit to per week or per month?
We ask when they join the program to plan on spending a full year with us, and we realize that things change and sometimes you have unexpected events, and we won't be mad at you if you can't complete the full year. But we have a lot of folks that are well over 10 years doing it. Our longest serving one is close to 20 years at the moment. We would want them to, on average, spend about 2 hours a week visiting. And the most kind of restricted part of the whole training is we have 2 classroom trainings where it's full day, and those are scheduled, and we're not flexible on them. But a big part of the training is making visits with the staff ombudsman at the facility where we want you to volunteer, and those are at your leisure, just like the volunteer thing is. What makes it so great is it's once you're certified, you visit when you want within reasonable business hours, of course. And it's always best to mix it up as much as possible and visit different days of the week, different times, because you get to know different people. But that's really what it is. And I think the one thing that everybody complains the most about is the thing that's an absolute necessity. We got a monthly report that we ask for. Nobody likes the paperwork, but
no, that is part of it. Yeah. So that's awesome. I have a group called Life After 50 here on Facebook. That anybody, is welcome to join. And I have actually put your brochures and your volunteer requirements and how to contact and all that. I've put those as downloadable files in the Life After 50 group. I can't add downloadable files to the Find Houston Senior Care page, but I do have them on the Life After 50 group. So if anybody is wanting that information, they can go into that group and download those files.
Terrific.
So that would be helpful. But, if you're looking for a volunteer opportunity and you really want to give back and help people, I can't think of anything that would be more rewarding. I really can't. I just know from what we have experienced in my family and friends that I have worked with, how beneficial it's been.
Yeah, and it is, of course, intrinsically rewarding. There's times when it can be frustrating, and you might after dealing with certain things, especially on the nursing home side, that you get frustrated. But I always just remind everybody, one person, one case at a time, and even in the worst of weeks, sometimes I'll be selfish and go to a place where I know some folks and just spend some time with them there and let them tell me how their day's going, and I usually feel much better, especially getting to visit all the memory care units within the assisted living. Really enjoy that. But also the big thing is like I said, a lot of times you're just being an ear and another human being showing empathy for folks. And that's all that's needed to fix the problem. And then other times you get involved in some more difficult conflict. But the good thing about a volunteer program is we want it to be volunteer driven too. So, some folks don't really want to get involved in much conflict, so they'll hand it off to their assigned staff ombudsman and let us deal with I guess, the more abrasive aspects of things. And then others really enjoy learning from it, and that's where you do learn. Each case, I learn a little bit more, and that's, getting involved in people's stories and their lives is where you really get to learn the uniqueness of them and their stories and their histories. I can't hear you now, Catherine. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
And can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
better.
great. Just having some audio difficulties today. I'm sorry for those who are listening. I know we've had a little bit of sounds in the background, and I've been trying to fix those and have not been able to. We may just have to have Greg come back on again if we didn't get a good quality, and do this again because he does have a lot of really good information for families, and I can't stress enough, if you have somebody that is in the situation where they are in a skilled nursing facility, an assisted living, or maybe you see that in their future, that would really, really be a good time to reach out and talk to somebody at the Ombudsman program and just discover what you don't know, because there's a lot that we don't know when we're suddenly thrust into this world. I know it was like that for my family and everybody I've talked to. It's the same way. Nobody's given lessons in caregiving 101, and we don't really know what to do. The industry is very, it's not one that people know much about until they're having to deal with it. And an ombudsman can help kind of walk you through that and give you the information you need. What else would you like people to know?
We talk a lot about trying to keep anxiety as low as possible on both sides, really. And part of that begins with that early education process on what to expect, what to look for, how to manage different things. And that equips you for being a lot more calm as you go in, because otherwise you're just getting snippets from very busy people, and there tends to be a little bit of mistrust sometimes on both sides especially when it starts dealing with the business side of everything. So it's good to have that advanced education as you go in, and makes you a better advocate for yourself, and especially if you've got friends and family involved in your care, definitely empowers them as caregivers as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, good. Well, Greg, I really thank you for coming on the show today. I hope the audio has not been too bad and that people were able to hear what you had to say. I think a lot of the audio issues are on my end, not yours. So hopefully when you're talking, they were able to hear you quite well. Thank you again for showing up, taking your time out of your day. I know you're extremely busy. You do a lot of things for a lot of people, and you're just a gem in the community. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much. Really enjoy talking about it anytime. Thank you for having me on, Catherine. Really appreciate it.
Great, great. Thanks everybody for watching the Life After 50 show today, whether you listened live or maybe you're watching the replay after the broadcast. You can always ask questions in the comment section. I will make sure that Greg gets any questions that you have that pop up so that we can answer those questions or direct you to the right person to help. So again, thanks for coming on the show today, and everybody, join us next week. We're going to be talking about gratitude, and I'm going to have an author who has written a book. She's written a gratitude journal, and I think it's going to be quite an interesting show. So I look forward to that. Thanks again, Greg, and everybody have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.